know what's great? Going to a game. You know what's not great? Parking at a game. With Uber, you can turn event parking into a non-event. Just install the Uber app. Enter your destination, confirm your location, and within minutes, a car will pick you up. I know, right? With upfront fares, you can know the price before you go. And you pay with the Uber app so you can save your cash for the souvenir shop. So make tonight a fun night. Install the Uber app now and take your first ride today. Uber, the better way to get there.
Good evening, Monster X radio listeners. This is Gunnar Monson. I am one of your hosts here, along with my good friend Shane Corson. I am also the founder of the Sasquatch Coffee Company and Monster X sponsor. Go to www.squatchcoffee.com to check it out and get your Squatch Coffee today. Sasquatch Coffee, have you tried it Yeti? Also with us today, we've got a great show lined up with Cindy Dosen, who's going to talk. We're going to talk to about her personal encounter as well as her endeavor into hair analysis, which I find fascinating. Before we get started with the show, I have Kai Roth is putting on a event in San Francisco, California, coming up in March, first year for the Bigfoot Bonanza. I know that Cliff Barackman is among his guests, and Kai's going to tell us a little bit about what we can expect.
Oh, hi, Gunnar. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I just made it here in time.
Well, great. So, Kai, tell us a little. Am I saying your name right, Kai?
Yeah, it's Kai Wada.
All right.
It's half Japanese, half Welsh. So it's a double floating island.
So Kai, tell us a little bit about your event, Bigfoot Bonanza, coming up in March.
Yeah, sure. So I host a show called the Super Shangri-La Show, and I show kind of rare and obscure movies at this old movie theater here in San Francisco twice a month. And I show movies that, when they have like a cult film series, they never show the movies that I want to see. And these are the movies that I show. And I have a huge love and always have for Bigfoot. Actually, the Yeti is what got me into it. And so, it's been forever since they've had a conference, and I've never known them to ever have a Bigfoot film festival. And so I just pitched it to the owner. I said, hey, what about having 3 days of old classic Bigfoot movies and documentaries and having some speakers come out? And the owner of the theater is a Bigfoot fanatic as well, and he said, let's do it. So I'll have Cliff Barrickman and Kathy Streen and Tom Yamron will be here. Flying out Seth Breedlove from Ohio and Craig Flippy to show their documentaries, and it's gonna be pretty good. I got probably the best local brewery to be the sponsor, so there'll be delicious cold suds being poured and watching Bigfoot movies for 3 days straight.
It sounds like a Bigfooter's dream weekend.
I think, I've had a lot of people who've told me, I recently just had a second child, and all my friends who go to different conferences, they say, oh man, I was just, it was a butt number because it was just back-to-back speakers and stuff. And I thought, well, it would be kind of cool to have more of a social mingle, and then people could come in and out of a movie theater and talk and shoot the breeze, about, whatever. They can come out and talk about the Bosberg tracks for a half hour with a beer and go back in and watch, an Ivan Marx movie and laugh at it, or something like that. That sounds they're not. The theater, there's 2 screens in the theater, so it's huge, so they can do whatever they want. It'll be fun.
Yeah, it's really affordable as well.
Yeah, I tried to make it as cheap as possible. So, the theater, I'm always trying to support my local historic theater. So, whatever I get, half goes to the theater, and then a lot's going to go back to the speakers and the guests. And, I think I'm more in just having fun and breaking even than trying to make a couple bucks, which is not something my wife wants. But, for the first one, I think it'll be fun. I think that's the most important thing is to have fun.
So, again, for the folks, Bigfoot Bonanza is coming up March 10th, 11th, and 12th
March
at the Balboa Theater in San Francisco, California.
And it's haunted. We just got the San Francisco Ghost Society to do an investigation, and there was we thought was one ghost, and ended up to be about 3+. So it's a pretty deep place with some good spirits in there.
Spirits of the bubbly kind as well as the spiritual kind. So go to, if you can make it this March to San Francisco, go to put the Bigfoot Bonanza on your to-do list. So Kai, thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, anytime. You have a good one, Gunnar.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So that sounds like an interesting weekend.
Yeah, definitely going to try and make it if I can squeeze it in.
Well, I know that you're booking along, trying to get your house squared away, and it sounds like you might be moving up to the state of Washington, a very squatchy state indeed.
Very squatchy state with a lot going for it right now for me personally. So yeah, I will end up being in Washington and close to some of my OP members, which is fantastic. In fact, I'm not too far away from my soon-to-be house now. And anyways, it's been a blast being up here the last couple of days and getting some hiking in and hanging out with some good friends. So really looking forward to getting up here and hitting the ground running, so to speak, when it comes to doing some more research up here and being that much closer to the Olympics, where I like to do a lot of, research and work with some of the other great people, including our guest today, Cindy Dosen.
Yeah, that's cool. And you're actually, your new residence will be fairly close to the OP's nesting site, isn't that correct?
Fairly close, yeah. I mean, it's fairly close. I'll put it this way: I'll be a lot closer here than I was down in Portland, Oregon. So.
Exactly. So that's exciting. I'm excited for you, and it should be a good time. Of course, we'll be dragging you back down to the Tillamook Forest when we can get you out. So.
Yeah, there'll be no dragging. I will be spending a lot of time down there. But to be the best of both worlds.
That's awesome. So our guest today is Cindy Dosen. Cindy is a Canadian who loves the outdoors and had an encounter a while ago, very fascinating encounter, and she has since taken on the endeavor of doing hair analysis. She's kind of become the go-to person in Bigfooting for hair analysis. Different than DNA analysis, but really fascinating what she's doing with hairs and being able to, of course, not having a tight specimen, but getting hairs that are associated with Bigfoot sightings and analyzing them, being able to look at them and categorize them as something that versus known animals. So I'm excited to talk to our friend and fellow member of the Olympic Project, Cindy Dosen. So let's get Cindy on the line. Good
Hello.
afternoon, Cindy. How are you?
Hi. Good. Doing well.
Good. Thanks for joining us today on Monster X Radio. How are things up in Canada?
Raining, and it's 9 degrees Celsius, so I guess it's like 50-something, so everything's melting.
Yes, we've been going through the big meltdown here over the last week here too. So Cindy, for those, I know you've been on Monster X a couple times previously and shared your encounter, but for those folks that, and I never get tired of hearing Bigfoot encounters, and yours is particularly interesting. Can you tell folks, about your first encounter?
Sure. My first encounter was something that I couldn't wrap my head around. It happened here on Vancouver Island, just actually outside of Duncan, on a mountain that we call Maple Mountain. It's a hiking mountain in the local area, and it's also timbered. I used to go to our farm every day, and I seen these, what now we call X markers and stuff like that. And I noticed on the way to work back and forth, and I didn't know anything about Sasquatch or Bigfoot. So when I would go online researching Bigfoot, and you have these different websites come up, like the Georgia website is the one that come up because, hey, it had pictures. And I thought, well, that's great. I want to see the Sasquatch. And, of course, there was no pictures of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, but they had pictures there of animals that they thought were killed or molested by Bigfoot or Sasquatch activity. They had shown, the tree markers and X markers and all these other things that we now, as Bigfoot people, use to sort of identify what we find a common anomaly in the woods. And so being someone that didn't believe this, I went in there one afternoon in April 2nd, 2007. It was like it is today. It's overcast and rainy and very dark and dreary. I parked my vehicle on the side of the road and walked up this deer trail, and I was quite fascinated at these trees that I was looking at, and I'm thinking, well, this is what they're calling X markers, and I'm looking at it, and I go, the wind just blew it down, this and that. But I couldn't, I took pictures of it and kind of looked at it and didn't pay much attention to it. I continued on walking up this game trail. It was very well packed, and it was kind of nice in there. It was very big trees and mossy and stuff, and took some pictures and looked around and decided, okay, I had enough of that, and I turned around and I started walking out on the deer trail when all of a sudden these two deer were running straight for me on the same trail I was. They were probably 12 feet away by the time they got at me. I thought it was quite odd, being a hunter, that these deer are running at me and not away from me. And so I'm standing on the side of this trail, and they went flying by me with their ears pinned back, like they're listening to something behind them. They didn't care about me. They were worried about what was behind them. And I thought to myself, oh, crap, I bet you it's a cougar or a bear. So I thought I better get out of here before I interrupt lunch, or I am lunch. And I ran out of the woods adjacent to the trail, but quite a distance, say 20, 30 feet, and back out onto the road. And as soon as I jumped down into the ditch, I had my eyes looking down. Something across the road had been there, or was coming up out of this ravine and just crested the encroachment of the road. And gravel shot across, and I looked up, and I thought, uh-oh, that's the bear or the cougar. And all I could see was a very large, round, black thing with a smaller, like a helmet on top of it. So that's all I seen, and this thing went back down the ravine. And I'm going, oh, man, it's a bear. And I ran up the road. All I had with me is a frickin' camera. And I ran up the road, and this thing down there all of a sudden just started sounding off like, oh, God, I don't even know. It just went over and over, and I'm running, and I'm just running up the road, and there was power lines there, so I ran across the power lines, and I got to the other side, and I could hear this thing pushing branches and just making a lot of brush. But this thing, this noise, I know today that elk don't make that sound, and deer don't make that sound, and there was cows 2 miles away. That wasn't a cow there. I didn't know what this was. And I'll tell you, I hid behind a tree. I was so scared because I didn't know what I got myself into. I thought it was a bear, and she had cubs up the tree. But bears don't normally do that. So I went in and I hid behind the tree, and this thing is still a yell, scream, roaring at me is what I call it, because that's the only way I could identify it, was like a yell, scream, roar, all in one sentence. And you could feel it. It was so loud. I could feel it in the chest, like the vibration from a speaker at a concert. You just feel it go right through you. So I knew that this animal was large, and it had a very large chest to actually produce such a vocal with so much vibration. I mean, at the time, I certainly wasn't looking for Sasquatch or Bigfoot. I was just curious about why they call these trees their X markers. And I'm standing there with this camera. I wrapped it around my hand because it's the only thing I had for defense, because I thought this thing was going to come after me. I'm hiding, and for 3 minutes, it seemed like a lifetime, but for 3 minutes, it just kept up and up and up, and it stood on the other side of this power line, and which is maybe 100 feet across, so 90 feet, and I'm too scared to even look. I just thinking, okay, Mama Bear, go away, Mama Bear, go away. That's what I kept thinking, and then it just went quiet, absolutely quiet. And I thought, oh, good, she's going to get her baby, she's leaving. And I come out from behind the tree, and I step down onto the road, and this thing just lit up the forest again with the same yell, scream, roar. And it was standing behind some 10-foot brush that grows along power lines. You could see this brush moving forward and back. It's got little white flowers in the springtime and leaves, and you can't see anything behind it. And I thought, oh my God, it didn't leave. Bears, she would have took her babies and left. Why didn't she leave? So I jumped back behind the tree, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then it shut up. It went quiet again. I waited a little longer, maybe 5 minutes in total, maybe a little longer than that, and I had made the wrong decision when I ran up the road. I should have ran the other way, but I would have ran face into it. I had to jump down onto the road from behind this tree. I went across the road, and now I had to run back the very same way I came because that's where my car was. And I'll tell you, I could run back then, and I could run pretty good. And I was running, and this thing all of a sudden down there started breaking trees like baseball bats or 2x4s, and I mean not quiet, like crack. And as I'm running, this thing it sounds like it's 2 paces behind me, breaking all this brush, but it's down in it's like a sheared off 20-foot gully. It's got a creek that runs through it, but it's straight down. You just can't get down there. I couldn't. It would take me a while to pick my way down there, but it's in there, and it's following me. It's chasing me out. And I got to at the time I had a minivan. I got into that thing, and I was in shock. I started crying, and I just got the hell out of there. And I came home. My husband was here. He was getting ready for work, and it was probably by this time, 1 o'clock, 1:30, and I come in the door, and I'm Snow White, and he's just looking at me. He said, "Are you okay?" And I just started crying, and he just went, "Whoa, it's okay." And I said, I don't know what happened. I really don't know what happened. And my heart's just pounding. I don't know.
Even now,
Yeah. It's like I can still hear this thing in my head sounding off. I can still feel that percussion. I can still, all that scariness that's happened, and it's like post-traumatic stress disorder. It just doesn't leave you. It's ingrained. It's burned in there, and it's like I'll die with that memory forever. But I was so convinced that this was not a Sasquatch. I was convinced it was something else. I thought I ran into a movie site and I got in the way. I had no idea. All I did was get on the internet and started listening to all these vocals, like, why can't I recognize this? And it wasn't till that night I actually finally got some vocals on the internet and put it in order, and it was African lion roar. It was a grizzly bear male that was fighting, and it was a grizzly bear and lion, and I'm sorry, I forgot the third one, a mountain gorilla, like when they go, whoa, and they pound their chest. None of those animals live here on Vancouver Island. None. Zero. And I was just shocked, I guess, and in disbelief. And it took me 2 weeks before I actually reached out to anybody because I was so scared. I didn't want to drive by there. I didn't want to do anything, and I couldn't, and I couldn't get to rest with this because I needed to get over it. And so that's how my passion and my research has turned from being scared to death for my life into something that is very passionate now.
Cindy, it's an incredible encounter, and I've heard you tell it quite a few times now, and I can always still hear the emotion in your voice, and it like taking you back there. I remember you were doing a presentation for one of the expeditions up to the Olympic Project up the OP, and I just remember watching you and getting emotional. It was something to behold because I could feel and just it was like I was there, and truly amazing.
Well, your memory doesn't forget the details, and I'll tell you, it just I know that day, and even still now when I get days like this, I'm going, holy crap.
Yeah.
But it's I've turned it into a good thing rather than let it be something I'd fear the rest of my life.
Right. I mean, it really is kind of a bit of the launching point for what you're doing now, and you're doing amazing stuff. At least I see so, and I think a lot of people see that and they appreciate the kind of the path, the road that you have taken, which not many of anybody really that has gotten involved with this subject have taken. I mean, you get those that go out and well, you kind of do a lot of things, but you've really found your place with hair analysis. And how did that come to be? I mean, obviously you had this encounter and you contacted people, and then all of a sudden you weren't just into the hair. How did your encounter transform from then to you getting involved with the hair analysis?
Well, I was, like you said, I was very highly active out in the field. I didn't spend a weekend at home. I was out in the bush. I was camping in tents. I was camping in cars. I went to places all over. I mean, I've gone all over Washington. I've been down to Kentucky. I've been down to Texas and Sunshine Coast. I couldn't get enough of it. And every time I would have an experience with somebody else, I was more intrigued, and it was like money. I just couldn't get enough. And after becoming health reasons with arthritis in my body, I had to leave my work, my job that I love very much, and also I had taken school many years ago to be a vet assistant, so I had to study all the animal sciences, they call it. So I had a knee replacement, which laid me up for over a year and a half, and I could no longer get out in the field as promptly as I could or as comfortably as I could, and I would have been a sitting duck for anything because I wasn't very mobile. And just the pain itself and the medications you take would not make me very credible in the mind at that time, and I'd have to doubt myself, you know. And so I ended up bringing my microscope out and started playing around with it, and then I thought, I've been all over the place, and people said, well, we got blood samples, we got hair samples, but they just sit on them. We don't know what it is. And so I thought to myself, well, why couldn't I help out fellow researchers that get hair samples but can't afford to send them off? And then so, why don't I do the middle work for them? And I learned something from it too. So this is what I did was now I'm sitting at home with the microscope, and I know a lot of people. I've, through expeditions, I've met, the cream of the crop of investigators out there and researchers, and so for me that was a perfect time to reach out to them and saying, hey, those hairs you were wondering about, let me take a look at one of them for you, and I'll tell you what it is. And so that's what I got into, and then I soon realized that there are hairs out there from supposedly Sasquatch, or I call them unknowns because I can't be 100%, that people have and don't know what to do with them, so they just put them away like, oh, Grandpa found this, 20 years ago and stuff like that, that they're sitting there deteriorating, and there's always a place for everything, and down the line somewhere, I'm hoping that where there's hairs and they're, as I say, unknown, then that person can, one, that's an active area, so that gives them more incentive to be a little more regular at those areas, but also it gives them a little more ground to say, hey, let's send this off to see, what it is, kind of thing, right? Instead of everybody assuming they got a Sasquatch hair, and then it turns out they paid $500 to find out it's not, or some places $2,000, So that's kind of how this evolved, and I like to get out in the field, and I'm finally just about all healed up, and so now it's going to be a couple of things now. And there's so much. Hair is so deep, and I didn't realize how much of it until I started getting into actually studying the hair itself. How many characteristics and components. You can tell how the animal died, if it was in a fire or if it was poisoned, or did this come from a live animal or was it a shed hair? I mean, there are so many things, and with the people that have sent in hair samples, it's good for me because we've discovered an animal that was purportedly reported that they were extinct in that state, and that was a bobcat
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
Idaho, I think it was, or Ohio. Yeah.
Ohio.
Julia. Ohio, yeah.
That was actually our own Julie Wrench that sent
correct.
that to you. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
And that was pretty exciting itself because it was thought that bobcats had not been confirmed in a Miami County, Ohio, since like 1850, I believe it was.
Correct. They were hunted out or something. Yeah.
Right. So, Cindy, how many total hair samples would you say now that you've analyzed?
Now that I've analyzed, I've probably analyzed about 160 samples, if not more.
And of those samples, how many ended up being known animals versus something unknown?
For unknown, there's about six.
Wow.
6 unknowns. Yeah. So, that's good because I'm starting to build a little very similar characteristic database is what I'm trying to do, or information, and I'll have to get someone to do a database with this. But having a whole selection of different colors, different areas of unknowns, it's pretty hard to say, that one Sasquatch was traveling all over the place or somebody, playing. It'll start to depict its own story, right? And the hairs that I have gotten that are unknowns are all credible people. Absolutely.
Yeah. In fact, the Olympic Project has sent you a few samples that have matched some of your other unknowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What are you looking for now? I mean, when you see you have these unknowns, can you describe those unknowns a little bit more as to what you're noticing and why they stand out as unknowns?
Yes. Unknowns are very human-like, but I would say a little more thicker, a little denser, I guess, in a sense. But these unknowns particularly are like a human, that there is no, I call it medulla, some people say medulla. It's like the core of a pencil, and animals are the only ones, animals are the only ones that'll have a medulla that runs down the center of the hair, and it's like a little black line. And sometimes it can be like little squares or little bubbles, or so every animal has a specific pattern, usually to their medulla. And most humans, other than Mongolian and Asian people, have no medulla. It's a clear hair. Unless it's a chest hair, then it will have some medulla in it. But most head hair or upper body hair will not have that medulla in it. And it just so happens that these hairs that I have, a typical unknown hair, ranges from 3 to 6 inches long, and anywhere from a darker brown to a copper to a buckskin color, like a light blondie color. But all of them have a very distinctive highlight of red in them. So I would say that is the main color. So if they were in the sun, even if there was such a black one, you would still see like red in the hair under a sun glint, right? So that seems to be a very common trait in their color, that they seem to go from these different. Actually, one collection of hair had a gray hair in it, and it was mixed with a darker hair. And when I looked at it, it looked human, like when human hair goes gray, it will get wider and stiffer. And this hair, the roots, is another good example of a human versus animal hair. And unknown hairs are characteristically human. The hair on the bottom, if you were to pluck a hair out of your head with the root attached, it's very round, very round, like a bulbous. Now, most other animal species, their hair, their root of their hair can range from elongated oval to a very pointy spike. So, and that's another giveaway too. When you get a see-through hair and the bulb is round, now I'm looking towards human. So now I got to rule out human or unknown, and that's when you with the microscope, I do a measurement of the hair, find any trace hair products, or you can tell when people, shampoo or body soaps and under underodorants leave little crystals. Soaps leave a funny scum, but under a microscope you can see this on the hair quite well. Plus the grooming of that hair, whether it's been combed constantly, you'll see grooves in the hair from a constant way it's been combed, or if it's been dyed, or even cut, trimmed properly all the time. So, and then that's one of the things that I have to go through, the scale pattern on the hair. Another thing, unknowns. Your hair all has what they call a cuticle or a scale, like shingles on a roof. They differ. The unknowns are very large scales, where human is very condensed, so therefore the hair feels smoother, where on the unknowns it's a very similar pattern, but it's very spread out, so the hair feels rougher and coarser, like a horse hair or something. Being that I had a set of 3 hairs from a witnessed unknowns, that I use as my refer to all unknowns to that, because it's the only one I know that was witnessed and is genuine at this point, that they were not human, but they were absolutely unknowns. Until I get someone else that goes up and...
No, I mean, that what you're saying is there was a Sasquatch sighting, and these hairs were found in relation to that sighting.
Yes, at a farm.
Yeah, okay. Right.
Yeah. There was a family of 3 that used to wash the baby in the backyard.
Wow.
Yeah, and they used to see them like every other day. So, and yeah, the hairs came from a brand. Yeah.
Pretty extraordinary.
So, well, that's lack of an actual type specimen. I mean, that's the second best, is to actually have, you can kind of connect the dots there, as opposed to I just found a hair in the woods. It's a hair found in an area that's associated with a Sasquatch, with Sasquatch activity. So that's cool. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not the best.
That much of a leap. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the best thing that I have to refer to.
Sure.
And because the people knew about it, they've seen them all the time, and their little one, they had a brand new pool, and it hadn't been set up yet. There was no chemicals. It was just filled with water, and the pool guy was coming back the next day to finish it. It was just one of those above ground ones that you can put on, like that's 6 feet high or whatever. Yeah, the mom used to go down to the creek by their house and wash the baby. The baby was like probably 6 months old or so, and I guess she was washing at the pool, and unbeknownst to them, they heard the dogs. They knew they were around that night, but the pool guy the next day, he said, I told you guys not to swim in there. There's, and they said, well, we didn't touch it. And he goes, well, he said, the filter's not running, and so he said, I checked it and pulled it out, and it was this big wad of hair stuck in there. And this big wad of hair, when she looked at it, she realized it was the Sasquatch mom that bathed their baby, and the dad would always stand behind her and watch when they were there. So this clump of hair, half of it was given to me from, like I said, a very, very, very credible person that had been investigating that place for quite some time. And so I took that as my starting point. So.
Wow. Yeah. Well, often, speaking of clumps of hair, how often do you actually get sent clumps of hair over, say, just individuals or a few hairs?
I've only had one other clump of hair sent to me. Yeah, mostly individual hairs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're looking at, a clump of hair. Most of the time with Sasquatch, I think when you're looking for Sasquatch hair or come across it or whatever, it's not going to be in a clump. That's an extraordinary scenario with the pool because of the filter and everything. Most time, if you're lucky, where it's a barbed wire fence or on a tree or in a bedding area or whatever, it's going to be individual hairs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, usually snagged on something like the brush. Most of those type of hairs were ready to fall out, so they were quite loose, and they just, even us, we can be walking by, and a hair of mine that's been just hanging by a thread there all of a sudden decides to drop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we lose up to 80 hairs a day or something off our head. So, body hair must be even more tremendous. So for an animal like that, it would be nothing to be walking along, losing a hair here and a hair there. And some people are very observant, and they find them. But 9 times out of 10, you're not going to find a clump unless it's on something that, like, tore the animal's flesh, or it got really hung up on something like like an old, say, board or something where it got a big snag of hair, or if it had hair mats. I've heard of reports where they've had matted hair, so if one of those mats got hung up on something, that would be a bonus because you'd take out a whole clump, right? But you'd probably have other animal hairs entangled in that, just from the fact that they eat other animals, carry other animals around and such. And a lot of people will question, like, how did a dog hair get 6 feet up in the tree? Well, I don't know. The wind blew it, the birds carried it, or a Sasquatch killed it and had it over its shoulder. Those are all sorts of stuff. But people absolutely think they have a Sasquatch hair, and they can't believe the animal that I, said, no, this belongs to this animal. They can't believe it. It was like, well, how did that get there? And I'm going, there's too many laws of physics to be applied. I can't tell you, but this is what it is.
Mhm. Yeah. Out of the, I would, the amount of possible unknown hairs that possibly are Sasquatch hairs, that's a number I would, get sent 150 samples and maybe 6. That's reasonable to me. If you got 150 samples and you 100 of those, at least you claim there with that, it'd be hard to kind of fathom. Otherwise, I think this whole mystery is, I think would be a lot easier to figure out. But out of those, go ahead.
If this was an animal that is just a fable, then these hairs wouldn't be what they are. Mm-hmm. I would be having none.
Right.
But
out of those 6 hairs, or the unknown hairs, whereabouts we talk? Where have these samples been sent from? Are any of those samples your own?
No, not my own. No. Mm-hmm. There's 2 from California. I think there's 1, 2, 3 from Washington, 1 from Kentucky, and 1 from, I think it's, I'm trying to think of, is it over by New York, upstate New York somewhere?
Okay.
I've been working with a doctor. He's actually a doctor. He's a bone surgeon for hands, and he's been sending me 12, 13 samples at a time. So. Oh
wow.
Yeah,
wow.
He's with another paranormal group he works with. So So.
Gotcha. Yeah. So pretty much spread throughout the country. Really, you got the West Coast and the East Coast.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it's it's not just a one-off in somebody's own yard that they keep sending in. It's from all over the place, right? So
yeah, I think it's fascinating too that you. And this is not. I personally not found a Sasquatch hair, but you have not personally at least looked at a Sasquatch hair that you have found or come across. So that's pretty interesting to me. But I also think that's actually kind of cool in a way because I think if you were finding Sasquatch hair, people may wonder what's going on with your research. These are samples that are being sent to you, and you've not gone, oh, yeah, I found Sasquatch hair. No, you haven't yet.
Yeah.
You made it down the road, but you're getting sent samples. That's awesome.
Yeah, and like I said, it's from out there doing networking, knowing people, visiting their areas, letting them, showing me what they have. I just wanted to learn everything, and from these people that I deem very credible, it has helped me get this started. Because a lot of them have been sitting on hairs, or they have hairs, or they know of. I mean, I was just approached a week ago from another talk show host. I don't want to say their names, but
I think I know who it is.
Oh, is there associated?
I actually
associated with the new show.
Oh,
okay,
maybe not.
Would it, from is it a new show out to do with Bigfoot?
No.
They're associated with that?
There's a national broadcast show. It's that there. Okay, and that's that's out of Portland. Yes.
Oh,
I referred Ron to you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. They did contact me. Yeah. And they I'm very interested, and I hope to get the sample. Because it's a 3-inch by 4-inch skin hair attached. So I'm
really?
looking.
Yeah.
I don't want to say too much because maybe the guy or whoever. But yes, that's what I was contacted about. So I am very very stoked about that. I'm just waiting for someone to recall me or send it to me.
So the thing is, like you said, it is a lot of word of mouth, and when I've been asked a couple of times about hair, and I have some of this hair and I don't know what to do with it. I refer them to you because you are doing something that's, to me, it has high value to the research that Bigfooters are doing. So
but it also gives that person. It's free, and it's part of their research, and they begin to feel like they belong to the community of Bigfooters and researchers, and they get a keener eye for what they're looking for out there too. So that gives them incentive to, try harder, look harder, and stuff like that. And they know what's in the area, right?
Well, and you also you're building a database. And it's got to be a slow process when you have to go through, and that's what you would kind of expect, like Shane was saying earlier, is that you would not expect out of 150 hairs to have a high number of them come back as Sasquatch or unknown. So
that's
cool. I mean,
Yep. Yes, it's like anything, you got to go through a lot to find a little. It's kind of like finding gold. But,
True.
Right.
Yeah. Cindy,
might be more rare.
These hairs, right? Out of these hairs, what can you, what else can you tell from hair, regardless if it's possibly unknown or not? One of the questions that we received was can you determine what the animal was eating? Can you determine anything like that from looking at a hair?
No, I can't. Not really. I mean, like as far as body conditions and stuff. I mean, some hairs, like I said, if it died, if the animal was dead and the hair was pulled out after it was dead, there is the medulla or medulla inside would abruptly stop about 1/8 of an inch just past the skin. It's called a post-mortem band. So I can tell you this animal is dead when you got the hair from it. So, if I get an unknown hair that's like that, I want to know where the body was.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Well,
but I can't. As far as dietary, it would be pretty hard to do that. Like keratin and proteins in the hair visibly. some of the hairs are really nice and shiny in that. So I would assume it's getting a very good high protein diet. Being one that's very pitted and sort of dull and stuff, can be, maybe something is wrong with them in that kind of sense. I have found crystals or minerals also on the hairs, embedded in some of the root of the hair, and one was actually a blue clay from around the area in Oregon of Crater Lake. When I researched it and found out that crystal matched identically to what they had microscopically, that at one point that one unknown had visited that area or found another area very identical, having this bright blue copper blue clay, and it has there's a big write-up about it. The Crater Lake clay has unknown properties in it to heal the flesh-eating disease once applied to the skin. That natives used to use that for healing, gangrene wounds and stuff like that. The properties in this clay. So that tells me that at once upon a time, somewhere that one said Sasquatch, it was actually one of the baby Sasquatch they kept washing. They maybe have traveled down there, or there's another area close from Washington and Oregon that has that same clay properties, blue clay and sulfur properties. So
wow, that's amazing.
Sometimes, yeah, so the hair tells a story. You just have to find it. So
Yeah, it's amazing. What these samples can tell you. I know that I had personally sent you a sample from what Joanne is working on this nesting, this bedding area. And I had sent you a sample, a few, and it came back. You told me it was a raccoon, but not just a raccoon, but it was dead. And I was like, dead? Well, I found it in the nest. And so how did it get there? I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, because, like I said, the post-mortem band was there. The root, the way the root was attached on the end of the hair. And raccoon is the most popular hair I get out of anything. Yep, it is the most popular. And I think, a lot of people use bait stations or, find them in trees and that. But I guess the length and the color of a raccoon hair is what people are sort of intrigued to. But I would say that probably out of the 150, I'm going to say probably 70 of them were raccoon or ringtail, which is in the lower states, which is a raccoon family. It's a subspecies or whatever.
Yeah, so, so you get raccoon a lot. What other, I would assume probably human hair. What are some of the top hairs you get sent that, that are known?
Raccoon and deer, elk, and cougar. You get a lot of cougar. The one bobcat, and like I said, black bear and deer are the
black
most.
Bear.
Yeah, black bear, deer, and elk. Which most people after a while know the difference between a deer hair and an elk hair compared to what you would look. The Sasquatch hair is somewhat limp, like your head hair. If you pluck the hair off your head and just watch it drape, Sasquatch hair does that. So it's not poker straight, and it's not wavy. It's just like a head hair, very similar to that. It's not curly unless I don't know if it's the pubic hair is curly or not, but I haven't had any of those, so I couldn't, from an unknown, so I don't know. But, I've had a lot of under fur, which is like you get the small fuzzy stuff fur. I've had wild boar hair. I've had goat hair, stuff like that. But yeah, I would say the biggest one is raccoon.
Okay. And what about with the unknown hairs that you've been sent and and looked at. What is the most interesting similarity out of those 6 unknown hares? Is it the color, and what's the number one most interesting kind of thing that you found with the hares, the unknowns?
The unknowns, the most interesting and the most prominent thing that I found about them was the color range, and I studied. I used to raise quarter horse paints, and if anybody's ever in the horse world, that to register a quarter horse paint, you have to take 50-some hairs from the foal and send it in with a registration application, and they DNA it and stuff like that, or whatever they do to associate it with that particular animal. Well, in this book I was reading, I think that they were working on with horse color, and then it's subjected to any animal hair color. That this one group were working with white hair animals, black hair animals, blonde hair animals, and red hair animals. And the most prominent thing that stuck out in their whole research was that any animal that had red hair was the most aggressive by nature and by disposition.
Yeah,
Any
Irishmen? I was going to say exactly. I was going to say I know I've been I'm being Scottish. I've been around a lot of Irish women, and I would have to vouch for that.
Yeah. I found it fascinating. It was a piece of information my head glommed onto, and that was many, many, many years ago. And even now, when I'm thinking about it, all those unknown hairs have a shade of red pigmentation in it. So, they'd have to be aggressive to survive this long. I mean, we have heard of stories, including mine, of just the whole confrontation, the whole actions of this animal. It was very aggressive. That I think if I wouldn't have come out of the woods when I did, I could have been in probably, I don't want to know, to tell you the truth, but I think the situation would have been a lot more drastic at that time.
Yeah. And yet you still go out.
I know. You know what? I just couldn't handle being afraid of the forest. I love the forest. And, when I first went out with, somebody from BFRO actually phoned me because I found the site and I said, I don't know what happened to me, but this is what's happened. And I said, I think it was a TV show or a TV set. I really did. I thought it was a movie because they do lots of movies around here. And I was like, that was the only piece of sane mind I had was, okay, if it was a movie, it's okay. I can accept that. That's the way I was thinking at the time, like, this can't be real, right? And, they contacted me, and so I got involved with them because they had an expedition here. And I thought they were the most craziest people ever. And I'm not talking about the BFRO. I'm talking about Bigfoot researchers. They're crazy. Who walks around in the dark with no flashlight, no headlight, cameras, and whistling Dixie down the road or singing Christmas songs and hiding in the bush? And I'm just like, oh, my God, they're really going to get hurt. And but damn, they sucked me in. And over the years, I have seen them, I have smelt them, I've heard them, and
you're talking about Bigfoot or BFRO people?
No, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, yeah. Well, some of the BFRO, when they've been out camping too long,
So, Cindy, tell us a little bit about some of your other experiences. You said now that you've seen them and smelt them and heard them. So, so tell us a little bit about that.
On different expeditions, different things happen. I've had trees pushed down at us when I was with another lady out at by Quinault Lake camping. That was pretty scary. The thing ran by the tent and hit our shower tent that I had pitched up separately. It had steel poles on it, and it had guide wires. And after this whatever was sitting up there watching us that stunk like dog poop, it pushed this big tree, and it just missed our tent, like 20 feet short of missing our tent. And we knew that it was an August night, and it was nice and calm out, that this tree just didn't happen to fall because we were sitting at the right place at the right time, but our tent would have got smushed if we had moved it back any further towards this ridge line. So, this thing went running by the tent after, and we thought it was deer, but it was actually grabbed a hold of the guide wire and tripped over, and then it ran up the hill again where the tree got pushed down, and all we could hear is this oomph, and then we hear this twang, 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 and I started laughing because I just had this vision of my whole shower going up the hill, tangled to the Sasquatch going up the hill. But so some of the things are very scary, but they're very real. I've had rocks thrown at me, myself and 4 others. Over in Seychelles, we were sitting on a lakeside and watching the water with a thermal, and it came out from behind us. And when I stood up with the parabolic and turned it around, it was standing there. I could see these 2 green-yellow eyes about 6 feet off the ground. But this rock had actually come flying out of the air and hit between myself and another lady, her chair. There was a fire ring there, and we had our backs turned to it, but there was no fire. And this rock, the size of a toonie, hit one of the rocks on the fire ring and went ping, ping, ping. And we look up, and there's no owls at 1 o'clock in the morning flying around dropping rocks on us. It just doesn't happen. So that was another interesting thing. We had it recorded. There was whistles that followed that rock, and the lady that was sitting beside me actually was a young lady from Eastern Shoreboard, I think Chicago, that way. She was a primatologist, that she would work with primates in research, especially just like with chimps. And when she'd walk into the lab every day, all the chimps would whistle at her. And she said immediately after that rock, this whistle came, and she said, that sounded just like the chimps at work.
Mm.
So now that's very interesting. And this was a girl that's never been out on an expedition before and knew nothing of Sasquatch at all. So, it's those little things that make my experiences very credible for me.
Mm. Yeah.
Right?
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
I've had visuals in Washington down there, myself and 3 other people. We watched them standing there. We watched them with a thermal. It's just, I've had, I think, 2 trees pushed down, a couple of rocks here and there. At the whistling at night is very interesting. We had a young man that was new to Sasquatching, and he went to go pee and said, well, just go pee by that tree over there. That's where us girls were going. So he got up and walked over there, and we were just sitting out there doing a recon out in the woods. And he did that, and as soon as you could hear his zipper go down, you hear this, just like the chimp noise. And we're going, what the fuck is that? There's no birds out here that whistle. And the guy got scared. He couldn't pee, so he zipped up this fly and came back. He goes, what the hell? I go, we didn't do it. Honestly, we didn't do it. So it's you have to go out in the field to learn what people talk about. When they say their eyes glow, yes, they do. I don't care what anybody says. I was there. I've seen it, and I've seen it on numerous occasions. I've seen it with a Sasquatch 75 feet in the tree line, standing there. You can see the silhouette of a mom and the little one squatting there. The little guys, their eyes are more blue, and the taller one, her eyes were more yellowy orange. And I'm saying her because it was quite a little one that I associated it as a female. Now, there was myself, 2 other women, and one gentleman. And we all seen it. We all watched her, and she smelled something horrible. She smelled like a cross between like a ferret oil smell, or billy goat, that musky, oily smell, and an old dirty barn full of urine. You mix those two together and it make your eyes water and make you want to puke. That's what she smelled like. So,
Makes you wonder what the male Sasquatch see in them.
Well, it's like the larger primates, they excrete quite a pungent smell from their armpits when they get scared. Well, maybe something like that is also associated with them. I don't know. But the smell was very thick and pungent, but it wasn't wafting. It was almost like it was like somebody pointed a hose at you and sprayed it in the air. And, but I tell you, it worked. It was like, oh, my God. And then it would just disappear. When she disappeared, the smell disappeared. So, and then throughout the days later on this expedition, everybody would, at 2 miles down the road, something just stinks down here. And I said, what does it smell like? It smells like somebody's old cow barn, and the cows, they haven't cleaned the straw in a long time. So we called her Stink, Stank, Stunk. So anytime you had this awful smell, I mean, it was like undescribable smell, then we knew we were tracking that one Sasquatch through this valley, that she was checking us all out.
Yeah, no, it's, I've never personally smelled what I would even consider be associated with Sasquatch, that smell, but I've taken many reports and all that nature. I have been to the zoo and whatnot on a few occasions and smelled a male silverback gorilla smell, and it's pretty atrocious, but it's and it's he could be 50 feet away and you can smell it, and it's almost like it's directed at you. It's kind of like hanging there, and it's a thick burnt rubber. It's hard to describe, but it's pretty bad. But I think, man, if that's what people are smelling, even and that it's usually worse, described worse than that. Like, wow, that's pretty pungent, and so it made me inquire as to why primates do that, like silverbacks, and it's pretty interesting. They get scared, and there's a couple other reasons they do it, but it would make sense. Yeah, it would make sense that Sasquatch is capable of doing that.
Yeah, like, you don't want to eat me. Look how I smell so good. It may be a way to protect themselves or identifying themselves. I don't know. Like to other, many people seen them in family groups, and so the best idea that we could come up with is that they must have clans, their own like family, communities, and that maybe they identify themselves with each with a little distinct odor that they have or do or whatever, right? So that could be another thing if they stumbled into some other buddy's territory or vice versa, When I go out on expeditions, I do role-playing, and role-playing, I get a group to walk down the road, a couple miles down the road, and we did this successfully here on Vancouver Island, and we got a return vocal. We had one gentleman in the first group out there do a male call in a higher pitch. He was younger, and I wanted him just to go like calling for a female, and just have that emotion in your voice and nothing specific as words, right? And then I had a female group that was half a mile in between them and base camp, and had her answer him within about 3 seconds later, like, I'm over here, in a high-pitched voice kind of thing. Same with the emotion. And then at base camp, I got one of the older guys to do his really strong male call, and he waited about maybe a minute, and I said, okay, do it. So then he let out a call, like, if you don't find her, I will. And within 2 minutes after that, 20 people were sitting there at base camp. We're sitting on this open logging platform, and we're facing this big mountain, and out of there came this, and it just echoed through the whole valley. And everybody that were sitting down, all of a sudden you could see everybody slowly creeping back to their vehicles, and they're going, holy fuck, oh my God, it's real, it does happen. And I go, yep, it worked. So they're territorial, and by doing this role playing, you can fool them maybe once, but it depends. What I was hoping for, they were going to actually come off that mountain and check to see who's in my area, right? So that's what I always do. Like, hey, we're a new gang in your area, and I get the boys to do their calls and that, and sort of trash the bush a bit with the trees and that, saying, hey, we're a new gang. We're going to claim this area. That's hopefully it's already claimed, and have a interaction, like an aggressive interaction with the resident Sasquatch, or at least get a really good vocalization from them anyways. So.
Yeah, and getting back to a little bit on the whistles, I find the whistling thing pretty intriguing. I've heard whistles on 3 different occasions that I found were interesting. One was up in Mount Hood, Oregon, where I had my encounter, and then the second one was with the Olympic Project when Dr. Meldrum was out with us, and he had asked somebody in the group to whistle in an area where we were having activity, and we got an immediate response that get the hair on my arm because it wasn't too far away. And
I know.
And the third one was out on the coast of Oregon with my buddy Larry Turner, and his dog reacted. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And so, but the whistling thing, is actually reported. It's been reported for a long time. It's not like a recent thing. If you look at some of the Native American creations, the mass creations, it's something that is associated with Sasquatch.
Yeah, the whistling woman of the woods, or the wild man of the woods, Thumbquist, Buckwist, Tusanka, they all have those pursed lips in a lot of their native folklore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What makes Vancouver Island such an it's got a history of Sasquatch sightings besides your own, and it's John Vandernagle lives there. They found impressions and stuff there, and it's got a rich history. What makes Vancouver Island such a great location? I mean, it's a pretty big island too.
Oh yeah, it takes 6 to 8 hours to go from one end to the other, and it takes 3 hours to drive across it. Okay, so it's not little. The unique thing about Vancouver Island is that a lot of the animals that actually live like on the mainland of British Columbia, the province and stuff, are not here. I mean, we don't have coyotes. We don't have poisonous snakes. We don't have magpies, certain birds. Our deer are just the California black deer. But we didn't have elk. They were introduced here. We don't have moose. There's a lot of things that we don't have. Gophers, badgers, wolverines, stuff like that. So we often wondered, why is the island lacking so much stuff? Did it actually come from the mainland, or was it shifted down from Alaska or something? It's just very odd. Even our wolves that we have here are distinctly different. The Pacific sort of gray-red wolf, and they're very aggressive. These guys will come after you. They're very aggressive. Our black bear are huge, and they're bigger than any other black bear in the world. These guys truck around 600 to 800 pounds. They don't hibernate. They're as big as a grizzly, But I think it's our climate here, because it's very mild, so they can establish themselves here. Vancouver Island is a lot of limestone. We have 80 miles, 70 miles or something like that of just limestone caves that go from one end of the island to the other. It makes good habitat for traveling, hiding, the minerals and stuff like that. So I'm not too sure why that maybe the Sasquatch got on here, found it remote, and then eventually maybe swam down to like Port Angeles and that, because it's not far from there, and same with the mainland. So it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. But I know that the ones that are here, that their footprints seem to be very wide compared to other places. So I'm not sure why that is, but
Vancouver Island, though, I've never been to Vancouver Island, but it's kind of a mecca for me, just because of not just the encounters and stuff and the sightings and the history, but because got two of my favorite people living there, you and John Benedict. So.
Well, I moved here from the prairies with no intention of Sasquatching, but it just seems like, for whatever reason, the Sasquatch has shown up on my doorstep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good thing for the Bigfoot world.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. What about you? You'll have to forgive me, but have you discovered a nest or bedding area? I know you reassembled one.
Yeah.
Am I correct? Yeah, and that seems also interesting topic.
Yeah, out on the south tip of Vancouver Island, out by Port Renfrew, where it hits Long Beach and people go hiking and stuff out there. But I was called out there because these kids used to go out there and get elk horns, the sheds, off this island in the middle of the river. And so I went out there and they found this humongous bed, and it looked like a bird bed on the ground, but it was completely made of sword fern that you find in the forest here. And all the ends of the sword ferns were they looked like they were chewed off. They weren't cut. But in this big dent in the ground under an old fir tree, so it was dry, but this fir tree was huge, right? The bough was covered over it. And this big semicircular bed was 5.5 feet wide, and it was over 6 feet long, but it was 10 inches thick of sword fern. Now, there was some big branches that went crosswise in that hollow, so it was almost like support, But the thing is, with the sword fern, it wasn't just a one-off, one time. It was over a period of time. The sword fern on the very bottom were old and dry and crunched up, and then there was a new layer of it seemed like some grass and sword ferns, and then, months after that, there was another layer and then another layer. And so whatever was there was returning to the spot, constantly, I would say, maybe every 2 months or something, but refreshing this bed with a thick, plush sword fern. It was weird, but the catch-all to that is there was a pile of feces right at what I would say the foot end of the bed that fascinated me. It was like 3.5 inches round. I mean, horses poop bigger or about that size. This thing was easily that round, and it was a huge poop, like a one defecation. It was 13. It was 13 inches by 13 inches wide, and it was 13 inches high.
Wow.
Tall. This mound of feces right at the foot end of this bed. Now, I know bears can shit, but this wasn't bear shit. This was a very formed, and it had been eating sedge grass and some kind of animal fats and stuff because it was kind of held together. But I couldn't see a black bear going around this whole bed about 50 feet around it. All the sword ferns were gone. Looked like they'd been chewed off and bent, and I have some of the original sword fern because it was just crazy the way it was broke off. It looked like there was it had been chewed off. It wasn't like a human had made this bed and used a knife or whatever or pulled all the sword fern was chewed off about 2 inches from the ground. And you could see all the little stems everywhere. But there was also a couple of things that when you get sort of a tree, I call them like little tree structures where they'll get 5 or 6 small twigs that are all propped up against each other, and they make this funny little pyramid. And sometimes there'll be one that goes crosswise, supported by this funny little pyramid of twigs and stuff. Well, there was one of those not far from it, 10 feet away. So I know a bear didn't do that because it was very hands-on. Yeah, and over the years of going to different areas that I've seen huge ones like that. Like there's no way a human possibly could have done it. So the sheer physics of it led me to believe it was done, by something strong. But this area here, it was very. I laid it actually in the bed, and I couldn't. It was perfect size. Like it was huge. It was the size of a queen size bed.
Was it comfy?
There was a few lumps, but I just did it for size so I could show comparison. But I took Dave Hill and a few other guys. We tried to get out there several times, but you have to get there when there's a low tide so you can walk out there. Otherwise, you can't get out there. You need a canoe. And I wanted to put the whole bed on like a tarp and then bring it back home, all one complete bed. Yeah, I did manage to kind of take some of the stuff from the bed, but I didn't want to destroy it too much. But I was looking for insects, and then I wasn't so much into hair then, but I was still looking for something, anything like that, right? But now I kick myself because, I should go back out there and see if there's any remnants of it. But I just got to get the guys together and actually get a canoe or something to do this. But, yeah, it was very unique. It was interesting, and I've seen one other nest sort of like that out here by Couch and Lake where I live as well. So
it's really fascinating talking to you about this, and because that particular nest you're describing, that which you saw, is so similar to what the Olympic Project is working with. With the nesting sites, it's uncanny, and your description is pretty amazing to me, because even when you're talking about these larger limbs, kind of as a support thing, I have found that with one of the nests I actually reached down in on the outside and I felt large limbs down there. I haven't we haven't exposed any more than that, but there was larger limbs, almost like a structure, to support this top part of the nest.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And then of course with the clippings as well. That with about 50 feet around there, that's kind of the same sort of scenario.
Yeah, it wasn't done with like mechanical means or a knife or anything, but it looked like a dog had tried to chew on it sideways until they got it off and then used it. That's what it looked like, and I just going, that's just like, wow. I know a bear wouldn't chew one sword fern off and carry it all the way over there and spit it on a bed and continue to do that every time it visited the area, because black bears just don't make nests. They make dens in a den. They don't make, this was just on the ground, exposed, just under an overhanging tree. But the thing is that it was in the San Juan River, and salmon come from the ocean and go up either side of that when it's spawning time. So it was getting its food right out the door there. So
and that's same sort of scenario with the bedding we're working with. It kind of paints me a picture. And then you also mentioned, the scat, the feces. On the original find, there was scat and feces around these nests. And if you look at what gorillas do, it's very, very similar. Not just the nests, but the behavior, like the scat around there. And so it really paints a picture in my head that these bedding areas, these nests, may possibly be Sasquatch. Without having seen them in there, other than some of the hair samples that you received did come up, unknown.
Yeah, I know. It's those kind of things, are starting to form some of the field stuff, research that we're starting to learn about habitat or I call them anomalies because nobody wants to say out. Nobody's seen them do it, so I call them forest anomalies. You start getting all these different forest anomalies reoccurring in the same areas where there's been activity, where there's been hair, or just abnormal-looking stuff that we can't associate to any of the local animals, So these are, over the years, I'm starting to get all these little pieces, and like you, it's starting to form a picture that these are the signs we need to look for. Now we're starting to get things that we know what to look for.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's just it's kind of an exciting time, I think, to be involved with this research.
Yes.
Because I think we are compiling. There's a lot of individuals, but there's a great amount of data and evidence coming out, and we're compiling that. And you're one of those people compiling data with hair, and there's others that are compiling data with sightings, and it's really come together. I'm really excited about what's coming down the road here. What have you got planned? You got any? I know you're recovering. What do you have planned down the road here? What's in your future?
I'm looking to get back out into the forest and start, looking around for. I want to get in there and be hands-on again. I really need it. You don't get rusty, but, after a while, everything gets to be mundane. And being I've been away from the love that I like to do, I'm really eager to get out and now more focused because of what I have learned, the tools I share with everybody what I find and try to find other people to compare similarities in their stories or what their finds are, because like I said, this helps us get a complete picture on how they live or what we should be looking for more readily. I'm hoping to get out more, heading down to Oregon this summer. I'm going to do 2 weeks vacation down in Oregon, traveling all over, going to Beachfoot, but we're hitting looking for gemstones and stuff like that. So
awesome. Well, fantastic. What's the best way? And I get this all the time. And what's the best way? Say someone finds some hair of interest. Maybe they just found it, or it's got they think it's possibly a Sasquatch. What's the best way to collect that, and how do they go about sending it to you? I mean, they just obviously don't just shove it in any old bag and just do that. There's ways to obviously you're not looking at it through the DNA, but
any hair that you get and you find and you want it to be examined, or you're just curious because you think it's from a Sasquatch, it doesn't matter if it didn't or not. Any hair, this is the way you should handle it. First of all, you don't want to breathe, cough, or spit on it. You should have a pair of tweezers or a rubber glove or a stick or something that you're not going to touch the hair, because you want to cut down the least amount of cross-contamination from you on it. The hair should be always put into a dry envelope or paper bag. No plastic products, no Ziploc baggies, no cell phone cigarette wrappers, and I've heard of all sorts of stuff. Don't stick it in any plastic bottle or anything with plastic, because that will, one, the mold will kill the DNA, but two, the chemicals in the plastic will also kill the DNA if there's any in that specimen whatsoever. And if the hair will start to rot, I can't get the characteristics off a good hair if it happened to be when it's rotting. Like, it'll fall apart literally like a moth had eaten it. You'll get it under the microscope and you can't tell. Like, there isn't enough area to get a distinctive scale pattern or, anything like that. It becomes, deteriorated beyond any help for anybody. The paper, just keep it in a dry, room temperature area. Don't leave it in the glove compartment in the car, because heat will destroy DNA faster than anything. If it gets cold, it's okay, but heat is the worst thing. Don't keep it in sunlight. And if you really want to know what it is and you're interested in having me look at it, Hominidae Enigma is a website I have on Facebook. And you can go there. It also discusses, again, there on how to, do the hair, but my mailing address is on there. You can send it that way. If you want, just send it in an envelope with the date, the time. Always sign your name on it as what we call a chain of custody, which means if you got some really good hairs and you just send me one or two and you keep the other half, that way if it's a viable hair, it's a really good hair, you have the other half that you can send it in and get it tested. It also, lets you be in control of your own sample. Some people have been talked into giving their whole sample to them. We've heard from previous stories of DNA and stuff like that once you lose your entire sample, it can never be retrieved. And some people will lose it. They'll use it till there's nothing left, and you have nothing. So always keep part of your own sample. If you get one hair, I can look at the hair without putting it permanently under a glass slide. It's not as easy to identify, but it'll preserve that hair if we think we can get DNA, if it's got a great root on it. Again, pluck a hair out of your head and take a good look at it. See that little root on the end? That's very important. That's your DNA. The hair itself, you can get mitochondrial DNA out of the inside of the hair, and that's mostly what a lot of these places have been doing. They crush the hair, they spin it, they extract it, and the mitochondrial DNA tells you the family history on the, like if it's a chimpanzee from Africa, it goes for the lineage of that hair. It doesn't tell you if it's a Sasquatch or whatever. It's not specific. It'll tell you, if anything, with mitochondrial DNA, they just come up, nothing can read it because there's nothing in the database for it to read, so it comes up unknown. The other nucleic DNA is the DNA that they get from marrow in bones and in teeth and skin, and also on the hair follicle. The round bulbous hair follicle, the root, is like flesh, and it has the proper DNA cells in it to determine the exact species it came from, right? That's what you need. If it comes out like, it's again unknown, at least it's, if it's half human, half gorilla or whatever, that's the important information, is that little tag, skin tag on the end of that hair. That's the one that costs you the big money to get looked at, but it's the one that's got the answer. So it's got to be protective. Mm-hmm. So if you get one hair, you can, if you want, just cut it down in half and can look at the tip and the mid shaft of it for you, or send me the whole thing. If you think I'm going to lose it or damage it, then just send half the hair, because I can tell you right away. If I think it's human or unknown, then you possibly have a good hair, and we can go from there as to what you might want to do. But half a hair will tell me if it's a raccoon or a bear or a wolf hair, coyote hair, and then you don't have to be wondering where you're going to send it to and have the money to have it processed. I'm saving you that extra step from losing all your money. But in return, I keep the little hair sample that you provided for me is because, again, this is for for my database.
You're building
information for
that's right.
Statistics.
Yeah,
and,
you're building
like
a
you were
database.
Asking,
right.
Yeah, like how many, what percentage is more raccoon than anything else, or, all these things will come into play, every time I get a sample. So I get, I'm doing this service for free, you get the photos, and the microscope takes pretty good photos, and I email those to you, plus a write-up, and so that you can print it off and say, this is what my hair was, blah, 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 right? And that's free to you. That's my service to you as an investigator, a squatcher, or a Bigfooter. But the little bit that I get out of it is part of that hair sample to hopefully build up enough information sometime, somehow, somewhere, or even me, that this will be enough to say, this is what we got. And from there, it's a stepping stone to something hopefully better and open up more questions and stuff,
And Cindy, that kind of rolls into my next question. What are your goals for utilizing hair analysis as it applies to proving Sasquatch? I mean, what is your end game here?
Well, my end game is that I get enough unknown samples to build like a small library, and that we can get to that next step with an individuals that are getting good unknown hairs. And if I get 25 unknown hairs, and in certain areas have certain colors, at least we know the reports that are coming in from that area. We know that Sasquatch is in that area, and that provides that researcher with a little more information is to pay attention, close attention to that area at certain times a year. But it also makes it that we can, you focus a little tighter on some of your areas, you may be more able to get a better collection of DNA, like blood and saliva, and hopefully, if there ever should be a corpse that shows up, and I don't want people killing them. I'm a non-kill group. I will not shoot one. They don't travel in one. Very seldom. I don't think they travel in one, and I would not risk my life and limb over trying to kill one of these things. But hopefully we get enough information to say that we have many tribes, many species of Bigfoot in the States or wherever in the world, and this is what this one does, this is what this one does. So we narrow down the concentration, and eventually we can say this area is protective. It's off limits because we know this family lives here, right?
So are you, at some point would you present these hairs to the scientific community? Have you had any contact with scientists that,
No. I would eventually, I have had contact with some, the Chicago University. He was Professor, let's see, I got his card here. The Illinois State University, Dr. Angelo Caparella. He's the professor of zoology and curator of vertebrates in Illinois University, and he approached me on my hair thing, and he's taken me under his wing, providing me with a lot of library books and stuff that I can't get because I'm not a student, but he also works with people, teaching them how to study this, and he was quite intrigued about what I had to say with the hair, and he's willing to give me a hand, like sorting out how to do a database, like what information and how to set it up, how it's pertinent. So I've had people in the sense of, science world or even, education-wise that would be interested on trying to, where are we going to take this? What do we do, right? So, it's not a waste of my time because I love doing it, and somehow it's going to turn into something. I just don't know what yet. But, if you get enough of it, it's got to do something, right?
Sure, there has to be a tipping point where, we can take the results of what you're doing and present them to someone in mainstream science that says, hey, and maybe get some interest. Because what you're doing is a scientific study. It's not just, you're actually, it's not a wild ass guess. It's you're taking and separating a sampling of hairs that are found in the woods, some associated with reports of Sasquatches, and matching those up to those stories. That's about as close as we can get. Hearing a lot of audio stuff in the woods, a lot of even sightings without any evidence. This actually puts two pieces together, which is, I find, it's fascinating, and we're looking. For me, it's about physical evidence.
Yes.
Audio stuff, we got a lot of interesting audio stuff that also goes into that. There's, as far as I know, there's no other than Ron Moorhead's audio recordings, any associated sightings necessarily. We don't have video of Bigfoot screaming, but we now have hairs associated with those Bigfoot reports.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Yes, it's something coming out. Yes, and trying to find scat. Kentucky, the research there where they had blood on the plates and stuff. I went to that place. I was invited to stay there for 3 weeks. And it was very interesting, the terrain, on how the interactions went down, what they did, and it's still happening today. Not as often, but it still happens today. Okay? So I learned lots from that, too. Just, the seeing the footage that was out there and visiting the area will definitely, it lets you know actually what's happening in the footing. The footing is real. It's not a costume, I'll tell you that.
You're referring to
Matilda.
Yes, the BFRO film site initially, and then it became Adrian Erickson's. Okay, so and you have some more personal knowledge of what happened in that research. I was back in the BFRO back in the day back then, and knew some of the people that were involved. So.
Yes.
Yeah. I always, the tease was always that there was some really compelling video that was going to come out, and again, it fell into interesting but not conclusive. So. Yeah,
there's more to that has not been talked about. And that's all I'm going to say. But John Bindernagle's been there. I've been there. So, yeah, this was, I'll just say it wasn't hoaxed.
Yeah, I remember back, the initial video was the pancake video. And for people that aren't familiar, there was a report umpteen years ago now. It's been quite a while ago.
Yes, it sure has,
Yeah, maybe 15 years ago, out of this couple habituating Sasquatches in their area. That they were putting out pancakes, and the guy was singing, and these Bigfoot would come up and eat the pancakes.
Mother-daughter. Yeah, mother-daughter.
Yeah. So eventually, the report was submitted to the BFRO. The BFRO actually did a study there for quite some time, and the first video that I ever saw was called the pancake video, and it purported it was a night vision video of a small Sasquatch coming up and sitting and eating pancakes. And it was pretty interesting at the time, and then it got taken down, and then the story gets very long and convoluted as a gentleman from Canada, I believe, bought the property. The couple that lived there, Erickson.
Yes.
And then that couple moved a little ways down the road from where they were and supposedly lured the Sasquatches to their new property.
Yeah, because the lady that was feeding them took over for her mom. Her mom used to feed them for, half her lifetime. It used to be behind an outhouse out there that she would throw the waste scraps after supper. She would throw them out there, and she thought just cats and dogs or whatever wild were eating it. But then when she went out there one day and it was standing there waiting for the scraps, the mom realized that she had to keep it quiet because this was not a dog. And so then they started taking pancakes out. The mom started this, and this transferred on. When the mom got too old to live in that house, she moved out of there, and the daughter stayed, and her boyfriend moved in with her, and the daughter took on the role of her mom. And it got to the point that if the daughter was out working, she would be coming down the road. One of them would be standing out in the road waiting for her to come home because it wanted the pancakes. The thing is the neighbor that lives there, she's the lady and the gentleman that lives next door, they're elderly, and when I was there, that lady confirmed it. Oh yeah, she goes, why do you think my dogs are in? She had dogs halfway down her backyard into this holler where they used to come up from, and she goes, why do you think the dogs are there? She goes, I don't want those damn things near me. She says, they come through here all the time. Yes.
So, that's
So
I mean, was always.
It wasn't just. Yeah, they was seen by everybody
Yeah.
that lived around there, and it wasn't just one.
Right.
It was a family, So it just is, when you go there, you're going, it just, it's you see how everything fits into place and what is going down there.
And the story requires context, just like anything else. I mean, it's
I know,
one thing.
Well, the person that had the place, he invested so much money that, it hurt him personally, and he ended up that all the information that they had for 5 years, he just said nobody's getting it, and that's the end of that. And I'll tell you, there is a lot of recorded information, and the public will never ever get it. They'll never ever do it. But So I just know. Yeah.
Every so often you would see that, there was a promotional tape that was done a while ago that he, like it was going to come out as this big on DVD available for purchase. Yeah. Yeah. And then
until the logistics and legal action took place on said person doing all the DNA testing, wanting all the videos and all the stuff that concluded, showed them how the DNA was, it was filmed, it was gathered, and said person wanted all that stuff to go with this new, subspecies that's being discovered. I would say greed, and it caused such a rift that it was decided that said person can go and take a flying leap, and he's keeping everything to himself. And he walked away. Yeah. He walked away from it, but but he is not going to allow it to ever be put publicly, ever. So it's too bad.
That's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, but it was a turning point. It's just that somebody got too greedy and got stupid, and it just blew up. Yeah. Yeah. And I often wondered about that until I went down there, and wow, yes. It's
so
very
just out of
humbling.
Curiosity, did you see any of the creatures when you were in the area?
No.
Okay.
No,
that was a question
I heard
that somebody
them.
asked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I didn't personally see them there. I've seen the areas. I've seen a lot of footage. I've seen the research. I was with the people that did the research on it. I laid in the place where Matilda was videoed. I've walked to the place where the pancakes were given. I was asked to call the said Sasquatches in the area because my voice and my looks was very, very similar to the girl that took over for her mom. So that was one of the things why I went there, is because I may be able to reestablish them in that area because of the way I look and the way I sounded. So I was rehearsing the words and stuff that this woman would use and call, and how she would talk to them and stuff like that. Yeah. And a certain time of night. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool story. I'd not ever heard that before. I didn't realize
because
that
I
you've
haven't
been to
told
that
any.
site. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't.
There you go.
I've had a lot of experiences and a lot of, and like I said, put myself out there to see what's, what is going on. And I think Cliff Berkman does the same thing. He puts himself out there. He goes to the areas. He sees what's happened, and before and after, and you get a really good perspective of what is actually happening out there. And I've made, like I said, I have a lot of good ties in the Bigfoot world with a lot of very, 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 very credible people. And so for me, that is what I needed. I needed people that have been there, they've done it, they've seen it, they know that they're helping me with this hair. And that was one of my jump-off points is just having all these people I've met over the years and made friends with and researched with and shared information with, that was the whole ground layout for this pyramid I'm working on, getting to the answer of Sasquatch.
And from your personal perspective, what do you hope that do you see them being proven in our lifetime? I mean, are we going in the right direction, or?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Okay. And
yeah.
How do you see that happening?
I see that as people are not the type of research that, say, OP has taken on. We due diligence in the more scientific world won't believe it unless we process it and put it in front of them in a way that they can understand it.
Right.
Now we're just blue collar workers going out there doing what they should have been doing. And they don't want to be nicknamed. They don't want to be, lose their jobs. So we got nothing to lose. This is a great hobby for us. But we're out there. We're having this happen to us. We have seen this happen to us. And we are the ones that are going to eventually say, ta-da, we're the ones that are going to finally open this whole basket. And I encourage a lot of people. I share my stories. I share all my knowledge with other people that in lieu of that you share with me, so you can find the similarities. Like, this happened. I know exactly what you're talking about because I know I was at a different spot and that happened. All that stuff is going to start making one big collective recipe book on this hominid ancient people. I think they are a subspecies myself. They have characteristics of human. They have characteristics of primates, and they're very wise to their surroundings to be able to survive. I mean, that's what we would do. You survive in your environment, whether you're in a city or out in the bush. You survive. You learn to. And some of them have learned to live on the outskirts of town to get food scraps, vegetable gardens, dogs, cats, and apples from trees and stuff. They learn that. They live that. They're like semi-domesticated. And then you go out where you're out of reach of man. You have to only hike in there, and you're at a very obscure place that only one or two people have ever been there. Those are the wild ones. Those are the ones that I find are the most aggressive. But those are the ones that will answer you, because you can fool them once, where the domestic ones you can't. And you know what I mean? So, and that's all the stuff that we're starting to gather and learn about. And we've probably learned more about the Bigfoot and Sasquatch in the last 10, 15 years than I think a lot of people have in 20 or 30 years. It's because you got to get out there. You have to be out there to learn. And a lot of scientists will not leave their lab. So we're bringing the out there to here.
Right, and the scientists, I mean, they have, reasons to not, because of the way that the subject is perceived. And in my opinion, the Bigfoot community previously has not approached science with the scientific evidence that, anecdotal stories are never going to do it for scientists. It's physical evidence. So that's where I have a huge appreciation for what you're doing. You're taking actual physical evidence and processing it and building a database of that you could actually show somebody and say, this is, and they could replicate what you're doing to see the results. So, exactly. So kudos to you. And folks, if you're listening and you happen to have Bigfoot hair, Cindy is available to look at or you have hair that you don't know what it is. And better if you had a Bigfoot sighting and pulled hair off of the Bigfoot. That'd be awesome. But
yeah,
short
you
of
even
that,
get a kiss and a hug for that.
but you can find you can find Cindy on Facebook. Her contact information is on her Cindy Dosen, and it's DOSEN, her Facebook page, and she processes and analyzes this hair at no charge to you. So it's a incredible opportunity. If you like to say what you're talking about is it's I always wonder how much Bigfoot evidence is out there in people's nooks and crannies, that in their boxes in their garage that Grandpa had. And
exactly. Yeah.
So if you you have family stuff that somebody found some hair and you want to have an answer what it might be, contact Cindy. She is a huge asset to the Bigfoot research community, and I've had the pleasure to know Cindy for quite some time.
Yeah,
so
that's right. Yeah.
So everybody, Cindy, I want to thank you for joining us today on Monster X Radio. We hope to see you out in the field shortly. I'm glad that your knee is almost recovered. So I know that you like being out in the woods.
I do.
For my co-host Shane Corson and our guest Cindy Dosen and myself, Gunnar Monson, we want to thank you for listening to Monster X Radio, and we will be back next Sunday with another episode. And until then, have a great week and Squatch on.
Awesome.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Why does getting to the airport have to be such a dilemma? The driving, parking, finagling a ride. Well, if you take Uber, it doesn't. It's easy. Just install the Uber app. Enter your destination, confirm your location, and within minutes, a car will pick you up. Whether you're catching the red eye or taking off at the crack of dawn, you can request a ride 24/7. So avoid the hassle. Install the Uber app now and take your first ride today. Uber, the better way to get there. Why does getting to the airport have to be such a dilemma? The driving, parking, finagling a ride. Well, if you take Uber, it doesn't. It's easy. Just install the Uber app. Enter your destination, confirm your location, and within minutes, a car will pick you up. Whether you're catching the red eye or taking off at the crack of dawn, you can request a ride 24/7. So avoid the hassle. Install the Uber app now and take your first ride today. Uber, the better way to get there.